Sexual trauma and awakening is a really big issue, and it isn't spoken about very much at all, and I really like to change that. In my experience, a large number of people that are going through Kundalini and awakening are also people who have survived some kind of sexual trauma. If you think about the figures, 1 in every 3 women and 1 in every 4 men in the West, and particularly in Australia, have experienced some kind of sexual trauma or sexual abuse. And in my experience, people that have experienced sexual trauma are more likely to seek out meditation, yoga, therapy, healing, spiritual books and videos, personal development, because they're looking for an end to their suffering and they're looking for understanding and relief. And they're the very things that are going to trigger a Kundalini awakening. So in my experience, a lot of people that are going through Kundalini have potentially got some kind of sexual trauma there as well. Obviously not everyone, but I would say a large proportion, because those people are so interested in finding relief. Creativity and sexuality are very entwined in some ways. It's a very similar energy, but because the Kundalini starts in the pelvis, and a lot of sexuality and sexual trauma is often stored in the base, the root chakra, the sacral area, the pelvis. And they're usually the first areas that the Kundalini and the awakening energy starts to purify. So it's not uncommon very early in the awakening process for sexual trauma, terror, memories, repressed memories, anxiety or depression around sexual issues to come up, and often to come up very early. And I think one of the really important things is that Kundalini, especially early on, can feel like something that's happening inside you that you don't have any control over, and it can feel like a foreign energy or a foreign consciousness that's having an impact on your body. And if you think about sexual trauma, which is a foreign person having an impact on your body, there's like a similarity, and even that similarity can trigger like the trauma coming up. So the sense of having some kind of foreign energy or consciousness affecting you is very similar to the original trauma and can bring it up. The other thing that is really important to know is that often people that have survived sexual trauma, part of that survival is you become very controlling about what happens to your body. You want to be in charge of your body. Like, no one gets to touch my body unless I say so. And that's really healthy and important. And so, and there's all sorts of control that's developed as a way of dealing with the anxiety and the side effects. And then the challenge to that is, if your survival and your well-being and your safety is dependent on being in control of your body, and then you have an involuntary, freewheeling energy such as Kundalini going for it in your body, purifying things, giving you body symptoms, giving you insomnia, then that is terrifying, because again, it's very similar to the original trauma. So it's not uncommon for people with sexual trauma to have a war with Kundalini. Yeah, like, get out of my body, stop doing this to me. And I completely get that. It makes a lot of sense, and I have a lot of compassion for people going through that experience. And so if you're having awakening and you have sexual trauma, it's really important to calm that Kundalini process down, because one of the things with working through sexual trauma is you want it to be very contained, to go slowly, and ultimately, absolutely, you want the process to be safe. So the first thing I do when I'm working with someone, and I encourage people, and if you're one of those people that's watching this right now and you have this particular combination of Kundalini and sexual trauma, is to do what's possible to make yourself feel safe again. And usually calming, containing the process down, and starting to contain the trauma, like almost put it in a container or a box. And so then you just let a little bit come out at a time. And when you're not ready for it to come in, you make that container really safe so that it just stays. So that you're not continuously processing those memories, or you're not continuously in a kind of childhood anxiety, because that's hell. It's very difficult to concentrate on your life or go to work or raise a family when you are in that kind of anxiety and stress. Sexual trauma, particularly childhood and early childhood sexual abuse, the child knows that something's wrong that's going on, that there's some kind of betrayal that's going on here, and usually there's some kind of manipulation going on. But children are very, very vulnerable, and one of the difficulties with recovering from sexual trauma is it tends to leave the person with feelings of unworthiness to some extent, sometimes extreme, very difficult feelings that may not make any sense, powerful moods that seem out of context, and reactions, post-traumatic stress reactions, anxiety. But often the difficult thing at some level is some kind of self-hatred and rage that gets turned against the self because it couldn't be turned out. It couldn't be used to stop the person because the child was too small to do that. Usually successful trauma therapy will re-empower you. So you're not just getting relief, but you're also becoming stronger. You're also becoming reconnected to inner resources and personal power that you were cut off from at the time. Plus, working with those energies in new ways, often from a distance. Modern therapy isn't about necessarily going back into what happened, but working at it from a long, long distance so that there's no re-traumatization. And that's very, very important. And it's helping people to find a strength and a courage that not only do they utilize to recover from the trauma, but that you can then take out into life.